chas v'shalom, not to say only Maisa. There has to be a pneumius, there has to be Ava, there has to be Yira, a person has to be a certain type of person. There's no question about that. But bottom line, the Maisa or Ikar can have all the right intentions in the world. If I don't put on, I sit and learn Chassidus for 3 hours about tefillin. If I don't put on tefillin, what did I do? Right? Whereas if I put on the tefillin without learning the Chassidus, that's better. Should I do both? Yes, of course I should do both. That's best. Right? But learning about Chassidus and not putting on the tefillin, I mean, that's really backwards. Right? My brother learns with a guy. It's really interesting. I know he's been learning with this guy for 10 years on Zoom, or before Zoom they learned however people learned before Zoom. And he lives in Northern California as a psychologist. They've been learning Chassidus. They're learning the most difficult sefer in Chassidus that there is, Ayin Beis. Very, very difficult sefer. Rebbe Shab. Very difficult Chassidus. And the guy understands it. He's very, very bright. And he's been learning it. They've been learning together for 10 years. So he understands what he's learning. So this fellow spent Shabbos in the Chabad house of a friend of mine in Florida. He went to visit his brother in Florida, and he was in a friend of mine's Chabad house. So the friend was, do you put on tefillin? So his answer was, no, that's one of the beautiful mitzvahs I don't do. Okay, fine. So then they sat down at for Brengen Shabbos, and this guy starts out spewing Chassidus, like real Chassidus, not Walmart Chassidus, like the real stuff. He's saying over unbelievable ideas, and Rabbi Shab and Sichos from the Rebbe. And my friend is looking at it, where did this guy come from? It's a story. So he asked him, how do you know all this Chassidus? So I have a chavrusa with a rabbi in Jerusalem. So my friend was afraid to ask him because he figured some conservative rabbi in Jerusalem. So he said, yeah, his name is Tuvia Kaplan. So my friend Tuvia Kaplan. This friend of ours was a shaliach in our hometown for 10 years before he went to Florida. So we know him very, very well. So he was quite shocked. So then I asked my brother about him. Yeah. He said he wants a rabbi who's 5,000 miles away. It's very convenient for him. His rabbi's 5,000 miles away. You can't bother him. Don't talk to me about him. He said, the only time I put on tefillin, the local Lubavitcher Rebbe is a really, really nice guy. If he happens to find me in my garage tinkering around with whatever I tinker around with on Sunday morning in my garage, if he comes in with a pair of tefillin, because I like him so much, I put them on. I've been learning Chassidus for 10 years. He knows Chassidus well. There's some screw loose, right? Because what's the ikr is putting on tefillin, not learning Ayin Beis. Of course you have to learn Ayin Beis, but you have to put on tefillin. So if a person thinks somehow that I'm not disconnected, there's certain things that we do that might disconnect us, even though we don't feel it. That's our problem. We don't feel it. Whereas Shabbos, we feel. I'm not going to start turning lights on and off on Shabbos. Oh, wow, look, kids, move your hands like this, and I'll turn the lights on really fast, and you'll see your hands are going fast. You ever do that with lights, right? It's cool. You went, okay. You don't do that on Shabbos. But that's when the kids are sitting at the table. Just don't do it. Right? Why not? Because you separate yourself from the Eibusher by doing that, and a Jew doesn't want to be separated, and we talked about the story of Berel and Shmuel. Okay. So we're about 6-7 lines down. Right? The Rebbe brought the proof from the Yidden, who might have been very, very simple Yidden, but they gave up their life for the Eibusher. When push came to shove, they knew that this is going to separate them from the Eibusher, so they wouldn't do it. B'shum eifin. Other things they might do in their life that they weren't sensitive that this was separating from the Eibusher, that's something else. 7 lines down. Lefi da'az, right? When it comes to having to be Meiser Nefesh because there's external pressure that's causing the Jew to do something that he realizes is against the will of the Eibusher. Hariyodea margish benafshe. He knows and he feels in his soul that this action is improper. And this the heathen wants him to bow down to some idol. Limsar nafsham al kedushas Hashem. I'm sorry. Ve'ena reitzach chas v'shalom, and he doesn't want chas v'shalom lipared melokei Yisrael, to be separate from the God of Israel. The Kezel Liyos said this to be Chas v'Shalom Nifrad Melekei Yisrael, separated from the Jewish God, Ein B'Yechel Shum Bar Yisrael. And again, we talked about that on Thursday because we look around, it might not look that way, but that's the pnimis of it all. Aval b'sharei devarim. What about other things? Hainu b'sharei averos Rachman al-Tzlan. Other averos that the person might have a taiva to do. When that taiva happens, what happens to him? Hareinu yodeya, he doesn't know. Ve'ena margish, and he doesn't feel. Shenas al yedei zeh nifrad me'achdusei yizbarach. That by virtue of doing this, he separates himself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we talked on Thursday that most communities have certain aveiros that everybody does, and so it's not so terrible. Right? Most communities in the religious Jewish world will have certain things that certain communities are lax regarding, and the same community could be very, very, very careful about something else. And another community could be very lax about the thing that community is careful about, and very careful about the thing that community is lax about. Why? Well, because it ends up being a sociological effect, right? Well, this can't be so bad because, it just seems to be out there. Right? The aveira that Chazal say affects everybody is saying negative things about other people. Right? Most people do that, so then most people think that it can't be so bad because most people do it. Chazal say it's not such a good thing to do. Kadosh Baruch Hu says it's not a good thing to do, and Chazal talk about it at great length. They also say it's one of those evaders that very, very few people are immune from. It's out there. The Jew has to be careful about it. These days, there's all sorts of seminars about Lashon Hara that you'll find Hasidim don't go to. Not because we like saying Lashon Hara, but because the problem isn't Lashon Hara. The problem is Avos Yisrael. Lashon Hara is just the runny nose. The virus is I don't have any Avos Yisrael. If I had some Avos Yisrael, I wouldn't say anything negative about a Murad. I don't say negative things about my family. Go out and saying all sorts of terrible things my family did. Oh, you can't believe what my brother did. Let me tell you. I don't do that. Right? So, not that Chassidim think Avos Yisrael isn't the problem, that Lashon Hara isn't the problem. It's definitely a problem. But Lashon Hara is the symptom. The disease is a lack of Avos Yisrael. That has to be worked on. Yeah?
Maybe the Rebbe discusses this further on. But, this is exactly what... So, my grandfather is a Reform rabbi, and this is exactly what he says. He laid tefillin once, and he said he didn't feel whatever, and so he's never done it again. And so what do you tell someone like that who does an avera, but they don't feel it, and then therefore they don't do
obviously, you're someone your grandfather's age is going to be a tough nut to crack, right? No, seriously, because it's always harder. The Balei Tshuva who go home to homes that have very little Jewish content have much less opposition from their parents to their Yiddishkeit than the ones who go home to houses that have a certain Jewish content. It just doesn't happen to be what's called Orthodox. The conservative parents will say, I don't understand, my house isn't kosher enough for you?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. The house where there's bacon and ham, so of course it's not kosher enough for you. They don't have any. You're not threatening their Judaism by telling them. So that's a problem. The only way ultimately. There's two ways. There's the thing we have to do with Jews who don't know anything. We have to teach them. We have to do our best to get them to sit down and learn some Torah, which Reform rabbis probably never have done. Okay, I don't know your grandfather. He might be an incredibly educated person, but your average Reform rabbi is an absolute, complete, and total ignoramus. Right? Not that they're bad people. They never learned anything. They never sat down and learned the page of Gemara seriously and sat down and learned the Chumash and Rashi seriously. It's not their fault. They're no different than anybody else.
They know how to lane, though.
Yeah, a third of the parsha. They might know how to lane. No, it depends. Someone has to know how to lane. If they lane, that's good. 100%. That's great. But most, it's a problem. They're not overly educated. Your 10-year-old child is going to have a more sophisticated understanding authentic Torah than your average Reform rabbi. Right? Meaning what they do, and to their credit, is, and I remember my brother, who's an Orthodox Jew, so he was a Rav in a shul in California for a couple of years, and he said, basically, you're a youth director for adults. So that's what it means to be a rabbi in a shul. You're a youth director for adults. So that they do very well. I mean, but they keep people sort of in the fold one way or the other. But, I mean, I feel bad because it's your grandfather, but the destruction of American Jewry lies at the feet of the Reform movement, completely and totally. The reason that Yiddishkeit in Australia and South Africa and England is so much less under attack. It's still under attack, but so much less than America, because they're very, very minimal Reform movement in those places. The Reform movement has destroyed Judaism in America. It's a big problem.
It's not your fault, dude.
No, it's no one's fault. It's not a matter of fault.
But still, what do you, we can learn as much as we want the things that say explicitly.
You have to sit and learn. So you have to learn Torah with a Jew, and you have to be loving and a good role model. That's the second thing.
So you think the root is what they haven't learned?
Always, by definition, because otherwise my conscious reality would be different.
The example you just brought up was someone who learned Chassidus for 10 years.
That's a very. I mean, I've never ever encountered anybody quite like that. But that's okay. But in all fairness, he set out. He's a psychologist. In all fairness, but he set out with that goal. Right? He wanted to learn it, but he wanted it not to affect him in any way, shape, or form. And so he said, "That's why I want my rabbi 5,000 miles away." Because if my rabbi's sitting across the table from me, he might actually say the odd thing to me that's going to penetrate into the depths of my soul and affect me, and I don't want that. It's much easier to be unaffected learning on Zoom.
The thing about that is my first shliach, the one who brought me from the forum, when we sat down and we read, we worked on Gemara, and it was such a foreign thing. I had no concept of anything. He said very clearly, because you keep saying learn. He said it's not an intellectual exercise. You're connecting with Sinai. So that possibly the psychologist is treating this possibly more intellectually.
Well, he's definitely doing it intellectually, but psychoanalyzing a psychologist is dangerous.
I thought that was.
I mean, I assume the reason he went into psychology is because he wanted to psychoanalyze himself. That's why most people go into psychology. They also help people, but they also find the whole thing interesting relative to themselves, I think, the beginning. Look, I don't know about him. I just brought him as an example of something that's the opposite of a Maisa Hu'ikar. Right? What does the Eibishter want? The Eibishter likes mitzvahs. What does the Rebbe believe in? Mitzvahs. Chabad on campus. What are they doing differently than everybody else on campus who's involved in Jewish outreach? Mitzvahs. We believe in mitzvahs. Just get Jews to do mitzvahs. If they end up getting that thing called religious, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. If they don't, Chabad. But at least they'll probably do some mitzvahs. They'll light the Shabbos candles. They'll put on tefillin once a week. They'll do something in their life. Right? There are other groups on campus. Their whole purpose is to get people religious. And if they don't get them religious, so then it's not really worth spending a lot of time with them, because the idea is to get them religious. How do you get them religious? You get them to yeshiva, which is true. That's how you're going to get them religious. Right? Chabad on campus is not recruiting for yeshivas. Chabad on campus is trying to get people to do mitzvahs, as many as they can. Hear Kiddush Friday night, they put on tefillin, light Shabbos candles, whatever it is we can do. Learn a little bit in Sinai Scholars, whatever. Obviously, I'd like people to do more mitzvahs. And once they start doing more mitzvahs and they start looking for mitzvahs, so then you and I call them religious. But it's a completely different focus. Completely. Obviously, in Mayanot, we'd love them to focus more on getting them to yeshiva, right? If everybody on Chabad on campus said, okay, I have to send 5 guys, girls, guys, whatever, to yeshiva this year. I feel Lubavitcher yeshivas would be bursting at the seams, right? Okay. But I don't have any claims. They're busy doing something else. They're not recruiters for yeshiva. If there are kids who are shaykh to that, they should have the wherewithal to look at them and say, you know what, you should go to yeshiva. That's where you belong. That's great. That's what they should do. Do all of them do it? I don't know. I don't know all of them. Do some do it? Yes, definitely. Are there campuses that always send us people? Yes. Are there campuses that have never sent us people? Yes. Most of the same campuses send people all the time. Right? Why? Well, because they've got that understanding as to that's also part of what I do. Okay, which I get, but that's not the main thing that's going on in a Chabad house. That is the main, and I'm not picking on them, I'm just saying there's a difference. That is the main thing that goes on in Ma'or on campus. Ma'or on campus is all about, they have a quota, they have to send a certain amount of people to yeshiva.
It takes away from like the genuine feeling of like this person wants me to get closer to my Judaism versus this person wants me to just like, it just treats me as a
Yeah, I
normal.
guess I don't know. I think I hear what you're saying. I don't want to fly the flag because I do think it also depends on the person doing it, right? I'm sure there's all sorts of people doing it for Ma'or who are very genuinely kind, warm, wonderful people who are Makar people and they love them and they, I'm sure that's out there. It's definitely out there, right? But there's no question that the shluchim, the idea is. Does everybody always live up to the ideal? Well, we know we all don't always live up to our ideals, right? But the idea is, I'm here for you. I'm on this campus so you can have the possibility of connecting to your Judaism. No question. That's why the Rebbe puts us in these places, 100%. And Baruch Hashem, it tends to work. It's quite astounding.
Rabbi,
Could it work better? Everything could work better.
as far as the Reform Jews and making the statement being the downfall of Jews in America, isn't it just the flavor of the wheat? Isn't it that the flavor of the wheat? Because we've always assimilated as people from Egypt, with Greece, and Rome, and Germany. And is that not historically?
Yeah, no, there's
Russia?
definitely been different expressions of assimilation. The expression of assimilation in America, yes, there's all sorts of people who are completely unaffiliated. But the idea that you can, make the horse kosher
Well, I'm not
is
saying
the most
it's a good
dangerous.
thing. It's just that we've
the most dangerous.
We've always done that.
No,
Is that not
not
true?
always. No, there's been different ways. No, sometimes people just weren't interested at all. Right? Reform, that started that particular. There were such movements. Of course, there were definitely such movements. There were the Steikim and the Baitusim in the time of Bayesheni, 100%. But reform as we know it started in Germany in the 18th century, right? And it was imported to America and created an opportunity to express your Judaism in a way that doesn't perpetuate itself. And so it's been an extremely unsuccessful experiment. I've told this story before, and I'll tell it again, that my wife, when we were going out, at one point we had been going out for a few weeks, and then she had to go to America to visit her parents. It was summertime. She was a student here, so she was going to America to visit her parents in New York. When her parents, in those days, I don't know, they didn't have a subscription to the New York Times, but it used to show up in their house, 2 or 3 times a week. They'd buy it in the box for 25 cents. You'd put the 25 cents in the box, open up the box, take one newspaper, leave 10 and close the box. That used to be possible, that people would do that, leave 10 there and only take one. So there was a box everywhere, all over. So there was a box by their apartment building, and they would read the New York Times. And my wife, when she was at home that summer, read an article in the New York Times about one of the first, if not the first, I'm not sure, Reformed temples in New York City, in Manhattan, that was celebrating its 100th anniversary. This is 1981. It was celebrating its 100th anniversary. 1881, right? Figure that's when people were coming, right? The first Gal from Europe. So they were celebrating their 100th anniversary. Now, I'm not saying there isn't one. There has to be someone out there. They couldn't find one Jewish descendant of the people who opened the temple. They were looking for one. Couldn't find one. They wanted to, bring descendants of the people who opened the temple 100 years before. Couldn't find a Jewish one. Now, there are Jewish ones for sure, because some woman had a girl who had a girl who had a girl who had a girl, right? It had to happen. Just couldn't. I mean, her name is McCormick, so they couldn't find her. Right. That's 100. That's nothing. 100 years is like a blink in Jewish history.
4 generations.
Yeah, couldn't find a Jew. Again, there are, but couldn't find them.
This is what I don't understand. It's like it's explicitly that like they don't feel what they're doing.
I don't know. I can't. It's hard to talk about other people. I'm just saying that the individual who's not feeling. I have no idea. I have no idea what other people feel, and so I can't judge their feelings.
It's also easy to say
Right.
once you've seen
I can't judge feelings. I can't. I can judge. I shouldn't judge anything, but I mean, I can understand someone's action or lack thereof. I don't know what they're feeling. That I can never judge, and I can, because you can see someone with a face like this, and he's davening. It looks like mamish. He's touching the feet of the angels. This guy, and all he's thinking about is, I probably really look frum, and everybody thinks I'm very serious. I have no idea what's going on in that guy's head, so I can't. So that we can't do. What? How do you change people? You educate them. That's how you change them. How do you educate? And you get them to do mitzvahs. You get them to do as many mitzvahs as possible. Why? Because mitzvahs change people, because it connects them to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shmuel said, you sit and learn Torah. What does it do? So obviously there's information there, but there's also a connection to God that's incredibly important, and it might affect you. Come, let's go further here. All right. So a Jew can't be separate. You look around, sure looks like they can. So we talked about that on Thursday, right? He doesn't know and he doesn't feel that he's being separated. And it appears to him that he's still in his Yiddishkeit, as he was. Now the Rebbe is talking to the religious Jew, right? So-called religious Jew. That's who he's talking to, right? Because that Jew sees his definition of himself is, I am a religious Jew. Okay, well, if you're doing this particular action right now, you're not. This comes from the Ruach Shtus that we saw at the beginning of the chapter. Atzei Shitim. Right? That it hides the light in the revelation, that he shouldn't feel it. I'm sorry. Peirush. What does that mean? Now the Rebbe explains this in a fascinating way. The Ruach Shtus, the spirit of folly, causes, Gorim is the cause. La Adam, Heder Hergesh, a lack of sensitivity. It's not sensitive to Elokus. It's not sensitive to God he's in God's presence. Vahainu, Shetoikef HaChemda, the power of the Chemda, the dearness, Bataiva, of his physical desires, Vachamimus, literally the warmth, but we usually say passion, of the Nefesh Bahamis. Nefesh Bahamis is very passionate about its connection to physical reality. Right? People can talk in a very passionate way about their favorite restaurant. Garim le hakrirus. This causes coldness. Kar, it's cold, which this room isn't. Veheder ahergish binyanim aruchni, and a lack of sensitivity for spiritual reality. I think most of us, if we're honest with ourselves and we're allowed to be honest, we want our cake and eat it too. Right? I want my gashmias and I want my ruchnias. I want it all. Right? Now we should all have gashmias. We should all have everything you need plus. Everything you need doubled, tripled. So you have everything you need and you give your kids everything they need and still give away so much stucca that mamish, No, that's actually, I'm starting to feel it now once I took off this. But Beseder, whatever. True, I'd rather freeze than be hot. God does this, you should know, that, I've been in Eretz Yisrael probably 45 or 50 years of the so-called 9 days. just about every single year, it's the hottest week of the summer. God has a very, very interesting sense of humor, and he turns up the heat as our ability to shower like we'd like to, and it diminishes. So that's just the way it is. He's in charge, and he decided it's going to be 36 degrees today. Well, oh, great. Thank you very much. I really, really wanted today to be the hottest day of the year so far. But every year, Baruch Hashem, just means he loves us. He knows we're here. He knows what we're doing or not doing. Right? So we should all have everything we need in Gashmis. Everything. But don't put your head in it. Put your head in Elokus. Don't put your head in your Gashmis. Are you going to have to figure out how to make a living? Yeah, figure out how to make a living. Right? What's that called? That was David HaMelech say about Yigis Kapecho, Kisecho. Right? The work of your hands, such that you should eat. Now, what does that mean, the work of your hands? Obviously, it doesn't mean that you should only be an electrician, because an electrician works with his hands, but you know what? The only reason the electrician doesn't get blown away by the electricity is because he studied all sorts of stuff before to know which wire is which wire, and if he didn't know all that stuff that we don't know, then he would kill himself every time he opened up your light switch. Right? And the carpenter knows all sorts of stuff about how wood works and how joints work, etc., that you and I don't know, and that's why he can build what he builds, and you and I bang our thumb. Right? So working with your hands, so to speak, demands a tremendous amount of knowledge about the stuff you're working with. Right? Less than the heart surgeon, I get that, but still, he has to know what he's doing. That's why you invite him to your house to fix it, because you don't know what to do. He does, because he learned. So when David HaMelech says Yigia Kapecha Yiseichel, he doesn't mean that you don't use your intellect to make a living. Of course you use your intellect to make a living, but your essential intellect, what should it be set aside for? Learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, being a proper husband and a proper father. That's where your essential creativity should be expressed. Making a living, besides you'll make a living also, 100%. And it might be you're going to sit in a meeting until 2 a.m. with people to figure out something to do with the business, 100%. But that's not where your head really is. Right? Famous story that Tzemach said it, that there was a chassid who made boots. Keep people warm in Russia, important, right? Made big boots, those big Russian boots up to the knees so you don't get all wet from the snow. He made boots. But I guess he was a little too into making boots. So the Tzemach once said to him, I've seen people who put feet in boots. I've never met anybody who puts his head in boots. Your head is in boots. Your head shouldn't be in boots. Your head should be in a Gemara, Rashi, Taisvus, and a Maamer Chassidus. You should also make boots. You're gonna have to make boots, so you're gonna have to have some little part of your intellect is going to be set aside to figure that out. But your essential creativity, what's it going to be in? Parenting. It takes a lot of creativity to be a good parent. Right? I heard my wife talking to our daughter the other day. It was an amazing conversation. One of the things they were talking about someone they know that a friend of our daughter's is having trouble with one of their kids, so they sent the kid for therapy. And so my wife said, maybe you should talk to them, because a lot of people, they'll send their kid to therapy and basically their line is, okay, doctor, fix my child. And then my wife said an amazing line, and this is relative to parents and children. She said, parenting is a team sport. Parents and children together. A child has a particular issue, well, the parent has to deal with whatever issue they have dealing with their child's issue, so that they can help their child deal with the issue, because obviously there's something that the parent is doing that's triggering the child. Not that it's not a matter of fault, right? But it's a team sport. It was such an amazing line. Parenting is a team sport. Children and parents together. Now, children have to listen to parents. They don't but when children have issues, so they're suffering, right? So the parent has to figure out how to deal with their child's suffering and what they might be doing to somehow give that greater energy, and what they can do to lessen that. Because children don't act up because they're happy. They act up because they're unhappy. So why are they unhappy? Well, what can I do to help them? But they're going to have to help themselves also. I'm talking about, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old, not a 4-year-old, right? they're going to have to help themselves, the question, 100%. But the parents, part of the deal. It's a team sport. That was a great line. Parenting is a team sport. It takes a lot of creativity to be a parent. A good one. So, I might want my cake and eat it too, but no, the Rebbe says something very interesting. To the extent that I'm involved in Gashmias, meaning I'm really involved in it, I have a lot of emotional and intellectual energy and invested in it. To that extent, I'm going to be cool and somehow standoffish relative to godliness. That doesn't mean that we have to be ascetic. Ascetics who are living in, in some dark place without electricity and running water and eating stale bread. Right? But we have to put our head in why the Eibishter sent us here. And the Eibishter sent us here to make him a place where he feels at home and can be revealed. Right? And in the meantime, we have to also make a living. We have to figure that out. Pain in the neck. Okay. I mean, I got lucky. This is what I do to make a living. As Rabbi Guth used to say in Mayanot, we don't come to work, we come to play. Okay. My wife and I were once discussing, she's a doctor and she enjoys being a doctor. Though she would like to work a little less. But we were having one of those discussions that are ridiculous discussions, but our son in New York bought us a lottery ticket when it was, $832 million or something like these crazy Powerball things. So we said, buy us a ticket. So then, we'll win and we'll take care of the family. So we're sitting here discussing what are we going to do if we win $812 million, other than our life would be destroyed. It wouldn't be destroyed, but it would certainly change because you could never trust anybody again. But, do they like you or your money? Well, okay. That's what rich people have to put up with, which I'm glad I don't. But that being said, so I was thinking, so what wouldn't I do? My wife would definitely work a few days less. She'd work 3 days a week instead of 5, 100%, because she's overworked. She's already 66, 67, and she would like to work less. No question. She works hard. All right? Okay, but she wouldn't quit medicine. I was saying, okay, give up. The one thing that I hate more than any other thing in life is getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I hate it. I thought that when you get older, you don't mind it. I've hated it for 40 years. I've always hated it. I still hate it. I can't stand it. I look forward to Friday when I get up at 8 o'clock. It's the greatest. I love Friday morning. 8 o'clock. Nothing like it. Okay. On the other hand, so now I've got $800 million in the bank. It's not really in the bank, right? It's in $700 million of it is in a Stucca fund. And there's 100, and you put it away we got Blianhar, we have 1 million of children, so that's an easy division, right? Okay, fine. What are you going to not do? Not going to teach Chassidus in the morning? I wouldn't have to get up at 5:30. I think I'd shrivel up and die if I didn't want to teach Chassidus in the morning. Okay, we can't do that. Not going to teach Gemara. What am I going to do the rest of the morning? I understand. I'm going to sit and eat, scrambled eggs all morning. I mean, and little tiny pieces of cucumbers and potato and tomatoes. I mean, how long can you do that in the morning? Okay. All right. Not going to teach in the Sems in the afternoon, in the evening. The Lubavitcher Sems teaching in the evening, which is just an absolute dream to sit with the Rebbe's daughters. What am I not going to do? So then I realized I'm just going to be tired. Doesn't matter, so I'll be rich and tired instead of not rich and tired. I wouldn't give up a thing, nothing. Right? So that's a bracha. That's a bracha shein kamei when you have to thank the Eibishter every day for it. Okay. Say that. But still, the only time you can put your head in the money is when you're figuring out where your tzedakah should go. I mean, really put your head in. You want to figure out what's a better investment than this and that. Okay, you have some money to invest and you want to make, so you look and tray around, make a few calls and do it and then forget about it. You're going to check it every 20 minutes? Oh, Bemet, take your money out and put it in a sock. All right? Don't do that to yourself.
Pretty big sock.
A pretty big sock. My kid's joke is that whenever they do something wrong, or they say, wrong, but I mean, they make some comment about their aging parents, So we always tell them, you're going to be cut out of the will. And they say, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my pair of socks. Everybody gets a pair of socks. Right? Even our son-in-law makes no jokes about our oldest son-in-law. He's the one that feels most at home, losing his socks. Okay. So the fact that we have a passion for Gashmias, that cools our passion for Ruchnias. That's just the way it is. We'd like to be in two places at once. There was a chassid of Rav Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, who was a serious chassid, like the real thing. And he had some bracha in Gashmias, and all of a sudden made a lot of money. He had a little business, but all of a sudden the business took off and he made a lot of money. And he found that he was having a difficult time davening and learning. Whereas before, when he had more financial troubles and should have been distracted by his financial troubles more, didn't bother him. And he went to Rav Levi Yitzchak and asked him, so what's going on? I don't understand. He said, now I have less worries, but I'm having a harder time concentrating on my davening and my learning. When I had real financial worries, I was really having a hard time making ends meet. I was able to deal with that. And the Rav Levi Yitzchak said to him, the menorah is on the left as you walk into the Beis HaMikdash. Hilchos Beis HaBechira, we're learning it now, right? The menorah is on the left, which is the south, and the shulchan, the showbread, is on the right. The menorah is chokhmah, light, or, and the shulchan is bread, gashmias, physical reality. So Chazal say, a reitza lashir yatzpin. One who wants to be rich, go to the north. That's where the showbread was. It was on the... A reitza lahachkim. Someone who wants to be wise, go south. That's the menorah. He said, when you were having a hard time making a living, so you were on the south side. But now, you have all this bracha and gashmias here on the north. You want to be in two places at once? You have to be mamish bata. So you can't have any you can't take any space for yourself if you want to be in two places at once or in the opposite sides of the room. Right? So the Abish gave you bracha over here, but that's going to make this more difficult. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's going to be more difficult. It's going to be a challenge. Now the Rebbe says something really interesting. Let's go further. Peirush, die Zugebunkeit, a person's bound, the fact that he's bound up, so Kochkeit and his focus, in inyane chemda v'saiva b'rusicha, in physical matters with a passion, literally with a boiling. Rusicha means the boilies. Zet mekader, this cools down hahergish, his sensitivity, dem der hair and good feel. Two words in it, the hair and gefühl mean sensitivity, right? Gefühl, feeling. Binyanim aruchnim, in spiritual things. I can't have my cake and eat it too. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have unbelievable bracha and gashmias. We should have so much gashmias we don't know what to do with it, but we don't have to put our head in it. Put your feet in it. It is a zoifil ibergegeben. He is a zoifil, fully ibergegeben, given over. Geben, give. Iber, over. Given over. Binyane taivasav, in his physical desires, ritzainaisav, in his, again, wants. Hachumrim v'gashmim, so consumed in his physical desires, those things that he wants in physical reality, as their ruchnias dicker hergish, therefore his spiritual sensitivity is by him, but tachli sahelim v'hester, completely concealed. It's not that it's gone. He still has a nefesh elokis, right? He has that nefesh elokis we talked about in his base. But what? It can be completely covered up by a person's focus on other aspects of life in this world. Again, does that mean we have nothing to do with that? No, that doesn't mean that at all. It means we have to strike the proper balance, and the balance is that we're more worried about our children's Chassidishkeit than our bank statement. And I might be willing to sacrifice a little bit of my bank statement to make sure my children are Chassidish. Okay, say that. Now that might entail certain sacrifices on my part for their Chassidishkeit. You know what I'm saying? I have a friend, amazing friend, who's a writer, So he really likes English. And I once asked him if he had ever read Harry Potter, because it was a good read. She really wrote beautifully. It was a really good, anybody who appreciates English would appreciate reading that, because it's just a really good read. There's very few things out there that someone who enjoys English can read without being nauseated by how poor the English is. Right? So I asked him, this is 20 years ago. He said, no, but I'm going to. I'm just going to wait until my kids are all grown up and out of the house. I don't want the books in my house when my kids are around. They don't have to see it. They don't need my taiva for reading a good English. He's a writer. He writes in English. Right? He said, what do my kids need Harry Potter for? They don't need Harry Potter. He's about Juba, for 50 years. So I grew up reading English, so I'll read it in the bathroom. I'll read Harry Potter in the bathroom. Got to read something in the bathroom. Right? So some people read science books, so he'll read Harry Potter. I should ask him now. All his kids are grown up. I should ask him if he's read Harry Potter. He probably forgot about it. But I remember when it was out there, so it was a good read. It was in the bathroom. Where do you have Harry Potter? It's in the bathroom. Right? This shelf of books in the bathroom. Yeah. The stuff you're allowed to read in there. Right? Okay. Good read, but he wouldn't read it. Wouldn't have it in his house as long as his kids were around. That's impressive. Baruch Hashem, his kids are Chassidish kids. His first grandchild just got engaged 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. His oldest daughter's oldest just got engaged. But to the extent that I'm given over to the physical reality, to that extent I'm going to diminish my sensitivity to spirituality. Hainu, shenasa bilti margish klal. I can become completely unfeeling relative to godly matters. Now the Rebbe says something really interesting, because up until now, when we talk about Ruach Shtus, we've generally been talking about it in terms of aveiros, like doing things you're not allowed to do, right? Even though David talked about putting on tefillin. Okay, but let's look at how the Rebbe does it, how the Rebbe explains it. It's very interesting. What he puts first. Vahainu, shenasa bilti margish klal. Ve'ena margish, what doesn't he feel? Lanoyam, the pleasantness. Varivus, the sweetness. Vatoiv, the goodness. Va'ilui, and the loftiness. B'kiyum mitzvahs. He doesn't feel the beauty of a mitzvah. V'chein, therefore, ena margish apachisus. He doesn't realize the lowliness, b'richuke melukus, in his distance from melukus, shenasa al yadei chet vavan, that's brought about by transgressing a negative commandment. The Rebbe starts with the positive. Usually, when people, when you read this whole page and a bit, so the focus is on not doing things that I might have a taiva to do. The Rebbe says, how do you create that sensitivity to elukus? Well, you feel the beauty of a mitzvah. And if you feel the beauty of a mitzvah, then you can appreciate the lack of that beauty if we're somewhere else. Right? Remember discussing with my son once, how do you do, we know that you're supposed to be, the ikar avodah of our generation is simcha. The cloud, you could avodah of Jews and forever is simcha. But Chassidus emphasizes simcha tremendously. And our Rebbe emphasizes simcha very, very, very powerfully. And if we finish this Maamer, we're going to see, which we might before, right? If we have a couple of days, we'll see a Maamer where the Rebbe talks about the centrality of simcha in our generation's avodah. Okay. So how a positive commandment doing that b'simcha, that means you feel the elokus in it, you feel the godliness in it, you feel the closeness to God that you're experiencing. That's the simcha of it. How do you not transgress a negative commandment b'simcha? Right? How do you not do what you want to do b'simcha? Right? I have a taiva to do something, but I don't do it anyway. Iskafia, what we learned about in our mind. How do I do that b'simcha? I get the discipline of it, but where's the simcha in it, right? I don't know. The person has a taiva for a certain food, and he realizes, he looks at it and it's not kosher. That's the way it goes, right? Or there's this unbelievable cheesecake on the table. Someone brings in a cheesecake, but not this week, but most times he happens to be fleshik. Okay, can't eat the cheesecake. So how do you not eat the cheesecake b'simcha? I understand you don't eat the cheesecake. I get it. But how do you do that? Oh, I'm so happy not to eat the cheesecake. This is such a wonderful, amazing, incredible, uplifting thing, not eating this cheesecake as you see all these people eating the cheesecake and like wiping the cheese off. Oh, this is really good cheesecake. Right? You're at JLI, Sinai Scholars Retreat in the morning, and it happens to be that you were bringing so late at night that you're still fleshik by the time you get to those breakfasts in the morning, and you can't have the cheesecake. When I went without my wife, a couple of years I went with my wife, but all those years I went without my wife. This year I'm also going without my wife. So I used to take 2 pieces of cheesecake in the morning, one for her and one for me, because I know my wife likes cheesecake. So I'd eat an extra piece just for her, so she'd have some clandestine enjoyment. There was once a guy who used to go to a bar and he used to order 3 drinks. And the bartender, why are you always ordering 3 drinks? He says, well, I have a drink, but I have 2 friends, my 2 best friends, who I used to drink with, and they're no longer. So I drink 1 for him and 1 for him. So, oh, that's really nice. Says, yeah, so I have 3. So one night he came. What?
And then he starts drinking and he only gets 2.
You never do that. I can't. You don't do that. No one does that. Don't ever do that. Seriously, don't ever do that to anybody. I don't care. But don't do that. If you know a joke, you just sit there quietly. And there's all these people who don't know the joke. That's socially improper. You never do that. Don't do that. There, Mayanot is an all-encompassing education. You don't do that. You just sit there quietly. Yes, he walked into the bar and ordered 2, and the guy asked what are you doing. He said, I quit drinking. Right? Okay. But that's right. So,
Decreasing for the joke.
what? You thought what? I was definitely not asking you to tell the joke. But if someone's telling the joke, you just sit there quietly if you know the joke. You might even laugh if you're polite. But you don't do that. Right? So how do you do it b'simcha? So my son and I were discussing this on the phone one night, and he said, it's amazing because I was just at a Farbrengen last night, and the person Farbrengen was talking about that, and he said an amazing mashal. Amazing mashal. It's an amazing mashal. He said, you're sitting on God's lap. You're his only child. This is right. This is the mashal the Baal Shem Tov gives about every single one of us. Every single one of us is in the Eibishter's eyes like the only child born to a couple in their old age. That's the love the Eibishter has for every single one of us. More because he's the Eibishter. Okay. So you're sitting on his lap, and he's stroking your cheek, and he points to something. He says, don't go there. Stay here with me. That's a negative commandment. Don't go there. I'm not over there. Don't go there. Stay here with me. Can you do that b'simcha? Ooh, you can do that b'simcha. Because if you go there, you're not with him anymore. You're somewhere else. But you're sitting on his lap. So stay on his lap. Don't go anywhere. Why would you want to go somewhere? So nice here. Oh. So that's a negative commandment, but if I don't appreciate the beauty of sitting on his lap, which is the most powerful expression of that is the positive commandment, then I won't experience the lack thereof of not being there. Adarabah, that to a great degree is the panemius of the days we're in now. Right? We're lamenting the destruction of a temple. But there's one thing that how do Chassidim relate to it? It says, Kishanichnas Av mematim b'simcha. That when Av comes, you have to diminish in simcha. So simple pshat is you diminish in simcha. We don't have weddings, and there's no music, and we don't eat meat and drink wine, etc. Okay. But how do Chassidim explain that line? Kishanichnas Av mematim. You limit yourself. How? B'simcha. You limit yourself, but you're still b'simcha, limiting yourself. What's the simcha? Well, I hate to quote Shakespeare when talking about holiness, but better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. The very fact that we're lamenting the destruction of a temple means we're the people who are shy to a temple, which is pretty amazing. Most people don't lament these days because they never had a temple in the first place. Right? But we had a Beis HaMikdash, and we will have a Beis HaMikdash. And ultimately, our focus is on the third one, not so much on the destroyed second and first, although these days we are forced to focus very powerfully on the second and the first. There's no question. That's what the Eibishter wants from us. That's what Halacha wants from us. So we focus on that. But really, how do we focus on it? The Rebbe says, learn about the building of the third. Right? Learn Hilchos Basi Bechira, which Hashgacha Pratis, I don't think anybody here learns 3 chapters of Rambam a day, but in the 3 chapters of Rambam a day, what did we start 2 days ago? Hilchos Basi Bechira. We started the laws of building the temple. So everybody's learning it. Okay, let's stop with the Rebbe's words, just go a little further. Right? So just like he doesn't feel the beauty of the mitzvahs, because he also doesn't feel the distance. But derech klal, generally, what is this? This is the nefesh habahamis covering up. Covers up the nefesh elokis. We don't have to let it, but it can. Naturally, that's what the Eibishter created it to do, meaning that's its job. It does its job very well. Your nefesh habahamis is very, very frum. It does exactly what God created it to do, just drive you mashuga. Okay, say that. But it's waiting for you to elevate it and illuminate it. That's what it really wants, right? What's the moshel brought in Tanya? Famous moshel, the nefesh habahamis. The king sends his son to the harlot with a bag of money around his chest. The harlot's the nefesh habahamis, that which is going to seduce him. Who wants him to overcome the seduction more than anybody else? She, the harlot. But what does she have to do? She has to do her job. Her job is to seduce him. And he's got the money around his neck. It's all there, right? But what does she want more than anything? Because she loves the king. She wants the prince to overcome her seduction. That's the mashal the Alter Rebbe brings. It's wild. So nefesh habahamis does everything it's supposed to do to drive us mashuga. But what does it want more than anything else in its true depths? That we transform it into godliness, which we can do. That's what Rebbe's talking about. That's what this whole Maamer is about. Hasul mikdash v'shechanti b'seichel. Dehine nefesh elokis. What's the nefesh elokis all about? Hu elokus be'etzem mahusay. Nefesh elokis is godliness in the essence of its being. It doesn't have to do anything to become connected to God. It just is. It's the nature of it. Hu befrat, particularly a nitzet shebei, the spark of the nefesh elokis that is in his body, vitalizing his body. Every single one of us has a spark of our nefesh elokis vitalizing us. Hu a nitzet prati, which is the particular spark, a shayach el gufa prati, that's relevant to his particular body. Shal yedea, that through this nefesh elokis, what are you and I able to do? Hu margish b'chol inyanim elokim. We can be sensitive to godly things. Hu margish ma'od. Listen, the Rebbe adds the word ma'od, and we're very sensitive. But davar shu menaged lelokus, to something that's contrary to elokus. The nefesh elokis is very sensitive to things that have nothing to do with godliness. Read two more at the end of the next line. V'hainu, the davar she'eina elokus, something that's not elokus, begilui, in a revealed way, ain't a reitzabah. The nefesh elokis doesn't want it. There's no parav in the world of the nefesh elokis. It's either godly or it's not. Margish ma'od. I'm sorry. V'hainu, the davar she'eina elokus begilui, something that's not godliness in a revealed way, ain't a reitzabah, doesn't want it. Ubefrat, particularly b'davar shu menaged al elokus, especially something that is the opposite of elokus. Ubareich mizeh kebareich midavar hamazik. The nefesh elokis flees from this like someone fleeing from a davar hamazik, from something which would hurt them or injure them. Uka'adam abarich mimavos, like someone fleeing death. That's the nature of the nefesh elokis. But the nefesh elokis has to put up with the nefesh habahamis in elam hazeh. It's not that the nefesh, we said, the nefesh elokis isn't changed, right? That the nefesh elokis has a level of godly love that isn't affected by the mayim rabim. We saw that earlier in the Maamer, by the many waters, the turbulent waters of this world. Right? But it still has to figure out a way to illuminate the nefesh habahamis so that it can express itself in conscious you and me. It's there. Just might find it hard to express itself. So that Jew who it seems is completely disconnected from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're not disconnected from HaKadosh Baruch Hu at all. But what? It's just not penetrating into their conscious reality, because their conscious reality hasn't been opened up to their godly soul. They might even know they have one. So they have to find out they have one. They have to connect to it. In order to connect to it, you certainly have to know I have one in the first place. How do you figure that out? Learn Torah, do a mitzvah. Do a mitzvah and see the effect that a mitzvah has on a person. There are people who might not affect, and there's also, there's more stories about people affected very powerfully by it than people who weren't, but there's also people who aren't affected, 100%. There's also people who are very, very affected by it. Right? That story of, it's a wild story. I heard this story from Rabbi Paltiel, who heard it from the father of the shaliach who it happened to. I think he told the story the other day. A major general in the American Army. So a shaliach, for whatever reason, was in his office in Northern California. I don't know what he was doing there, but there was obviously something to do with, shlichus in the area. He was in the office of a major general, and the major general's wife was also there. So I don't know, there was something, I don't know why he was there. Anyway, it turned out the major general, who was black, he was an African American. He wasn't exactly an African American, I guess, right? If you hear the story. So he said to the shaliach that his great-grandmother was Jewish. So of course he asked, what side? Mother. So he's Jewish. This guy's Jewish. As Jewish as Moshe Rabbeinu. So he said, that makes you Jewish. He says, what do you mean? He said, well, because it's matrilineal descent. So that if your great-grandmother was Jewish and that was your grandmother's mother and your mother's mother, so that means you're Jewish. As you're as Jewish as me, there's no difference. It's all the mother. So he's like, oh, shocked. So then the shliach says, now that we found out that you're Jewish, you should do something Jewish. He says, what should I do? You put on tefillin. What's that? Shows him. I don't know, that's like a little wild. That's like a little extreme. I'm not so sure I could do that. So his wife says, come on. His wife's not Jewish. Come on, no, do it. Put on these things. She says, okay. So it takes him about 20 minutes to roll up those super starched sleeves in American Army uniforms. And they roll up his sleeve and they put tefillin on. He puts on tefillin. He says Shema with him, and the guy bursts out crying uncontrollably. And he asks the shaliach, did you just put a spell on me? Why am I crying? So, you're crying because you have a Jewish soul, and it's finally allowed to express itself, and you're expressing that in this uncontrollable cry. What happened to him after? I have no idea. He had a very, very, very powerful reaction to that. There was a Jew who was it wasn't Gil Locks, it was another one, who was a guru, and his thing was silence. So people just came to him and gave him gifts and stuff, and he didn't say anything. And he was Jewish, so a shaliach went to him and asked him if he wanted to put on tefillin. He's silent, didn't say anything. So then he turned around to leave. He said, he's silent. He can't tell me no. So he just went over to him, rolled up his sleeve, and put tefillin on the guy. The guy can't say anything, right? A vow of silence. Oh, can't say bracha. Say it then. Bracha is a din d'Rabbanan, the tefillin's a din d'Oraisa. Right? Okay. So what did he notice? Tears flowing out of the guy's eyes as he's wearing his tefillin. He's mamish and Aveda Zara, this like real, real Aveda Zara Minatara, like the real stuff. Crying like a baby with his tefillin. Because sometimes there's so many stories like that of the Pintel Yid exploding. There's stories of it not exploding also. But it's in there. We just have to figure out how to get on. When you talk to a Jew, who you're talking to. So you're talking through their nefesh habahamis, but not to their nefesh habahamis. You want to get to their neshama. Now you have to go to their neshama through the nefesh habahamis. You can't get to their neshama without getting through their nefesh habahamis. But you have to realize that behind them you don't have to be afraid of saying something that's real and true because, they might be, their nefesh habahamis might not be able to handle this. Well, obviously you have to use a certain amount of sense, but don't be so worried about the Nefesh Bahamis, because behind it there's a Nefesh Elokis that is dying to hear these words. It has to be said in such a way that the Nefesh Bahamis can deal with it enough to let it get through to the Nefesh Elokis. But there's a Nefesh Elokis back there. So you don't have to be embarrassed of the truth. This person knows the truth and wants the truth. They just haven't been exposed to it. It's not their fault. Okay. Same goes with that person whose teeth you brush. Same thing. He also wants the truth. So you don't have to be embarrassed about telling him the truth. Don't think he's going to blow a fuse if